Today's guest is Hafiz Kasman, co-founder of Kinobi, an educational tech platform helping students and graduates build meaningful careers. Hafiz began his journey in management consulting before taking the leap into entrepreneurship with Kinobi, which now reaches millions of followers and partners with institutions across Asia. He was also recognized on the Forbes 30 Under 30 Asia list. Raised in a lower middle class Malay family in Singapore, Hafiz learned early on that hard work matters. But true success is about defining what you want your life to stand for. In this episode, we talk about the mindset shift from stability to purpose and why containment, not just ambition, is the real competitive edge. This is the Asian Rebel Club podcast, a space for the ones who grew up chasing approval and are now learning how to be free. I am Crystal Ren, entrepreneur, creative, and recovering achievement addict. Each week, we dive into honest conversations with Asian rebels, rewriting what success, identity, and freedom really mean. If you're ready to live your story, not somebody else, welcome home. Hi, Hafiz. Welcome to the Asian Rebel Club podcast.
Hi, nice to meet you, Crystal.
So, just for the benefit of me and the listeners, can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Sure, yeah. First of all, thank you for having me in the podcast, Crystal. So my name is Hafiz. I'm the co-founder of Kinobi. So we're a B2B enterprise SaaS focused on education. What we do is we have two products. We have one for backend system for career services teams, as well as another system for helping career services teams manage their mentoring programs. That's a short intro. Feel free to follow on from there.
Yeah. And I know from our conversation you were Indonesian, but you're Singaporean, but live in Jakarta right now.
Yeah, that's right. I live in Jakarta. I've been here for about 4 years, which is about the time when we started the company as well.
Right. Okay. So maybe just tell us a bit about your upbringing and also how did your upbringing shape your relationship with success?
Yeah. I think general upbringing, I think I come from a basically lower middle class family. I'm a unique Asian of sorts where I'm a minority in Singapore. So I'm
Yeah.
ethnically Malay. And that comes with its own nuances as well. If it's any related to how it's a relationship with success, I think two things come to mind, right? So at one, my parents are, my dad is a driver, my mom is a freelance teacher. So one of the things that really influenced me was really watching my dad work. He was a chauffeur. I worked for a company, and that's his essentially day to day. Starts his morning at 6 a.m. ends his day at 10 p.m. And then on weekends, he would also be a cab driver. So I think I learned the value of hard work and putting money on the table from my dad. The second part of my upbringing is as an introvert and as the only child at home, I was quite used to, I was probably an addicted gamer. But in games, it's very interesting because as a 9 or 10-year-old playing games, you can create a lot of things, right? So back then, as a 10-year-old, I created a community of one of the games called RuneScape, and it was like the top 10 community globally. So like 500 people in my clan. There, I really
That's a
found
lot
the joy.
for a 10-year-old.
Yeah, it's nice coordinating timings, booking meetings, but giving me the joy of building. And ever since then, I've caught that up.
That's very interesting. So I don't know whether you know, but I was born and raised in China, and I went to Canada for study and moved here to Singapore. So I'm not Singaporean, even though I'm Chinese. I'm like from China, right? So even though I look in my name, everything, it looked like they all kind of fitting, the society of Singapore, but I never feel like I'm a part of it. I just wanted to know. How did you feel growing up? Because you said that you are the minority, like you're Malay, but you grew up here. And how did that shape you as well?
Yeah. I mean, I guess if just to give a background of how Malays are perceived, I think firstly, Malays are the natives of the entire region of Nusantara, which includes Malaysia, Singapore, and Indonesia. But of course, as everyone knows, Singapore is a majority Chinese population in terms of ethnicity. I think it comes with its own backdrop. Like, for example, statistically, Malays are typically less academically achieved, if that's the word to frame it. And I think we're generally not perceived as, some would say, perceived as more relaxed in life,
More creative.
as more humble career ambitions.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
think that for me is very interesting because yeah, even in university, the general population of Malaysia in Singapore is 15%. In university, I think that becomes about 5%, right? So,
Mm.
and even in consulting, I was probably the first person in all the
Yeah.
environment in Singapore.
I I I don't think I've seen another one. I could be wrong, but
Exactly,
yeah. Yeah.
exactly.
So what gave you the drive? Because, it seems like the stereotype and, what most Malay do in the society of Singapore, it's something else, right? Like they're not necessarily chasing conventional success, if that's what I get from you. So what made you so driven and chose a different route than, most of them?
Well, yeah, I think for me, I think specifically, one, I think it's always nice to have a chip on your shoulder,
Mm,
which gives you sort of an extra boost in motivation. And second, I think growing up, I was influenced by external factors. As a person who's highly introvert, I think introversion shapes my thinking more independently. Really, I don't look into like my peers or like folks around me for comparison. I independently think and understand what brings me joy. And for me, what brings me joy is right now building a company of which the mission of which I truly am passionate about.
mm. So I know that, obviously you went to SMU, the Singapore Management University, and then we were co-workers in all of them, even though we're never in the same projects. But it's a very much like a safe path, right? It's, perceived to be high status, you're doing like the right thing. And from, what you're saying that it didn't seem like you come from a family that, perhaps like had that financial stability. It feels like maybe that meant a lot for you to be like for me too, right? To be in that kind of environment where you feel like you do have the stability, you do have the recognition. So what made you kind of give it up and then start a startup journey? What made you walk away from all that?
Yeah, I think first thing, I think financial stability is there. I always think financial stability is a matter of perception at some point, right? So I think we're
Mm,
financially content as a family. We've
yeah.
never really truly struggled. I would say.
Mm,
I think my parents gave me what I needed, but but the point taken of the point of the question still taken. Like why? I mean, career wise, I could have just cruised and sailed and get a good income on a year to year basis. But I think my background also gives me the benefit of not having what do you call an elevated lifestyle, right? So if I have nothing to lose really.
mm,
If that was the baseline or expectation, I've exceeded that in some ways academically or in terms of traditional career.
yeah.
I don't mind starting from scratch. I don't mind going back to the baseline and then using it as an opportunity to do completely something else. So I don't have lifestyle inflation. My lifestyle was humble from the start. I can go back to that anytime I want.
Mm.
And I think that allowed me sort of the social or psychological safety net to just do something completely new.
Right. So I think two things I want to mention. The first thing is I've noticed in a lot of people and myself included that like sometimes, like the scarcity mindset, as you mentioned, it wasn't necessarily the objective reality of, your life, right? And it can be like, what our parents told us growing up or like what we have observed in terms of their consumption patterns and stuff. So what, if you were to look back, what made you feel safe in taking risk? Because I think that there's a lot of people in Singapore, maybe objectively speaking, they can take more risk than they allow themselves to. And there's like an internal hurdle that they can't go through.
Well, yeah, I think goes back to mm, I'm quite unique where I don't really care what people think and I don't compare myself to others. I mean, if I live my life comparing to our consulting peers all the time, I would probably regret a lot of
I
the
mean,
decisions that I made.
you clearly
Uh,
don't have Asian parents. That's what we're taught
different
growing
type,
up.
different type of Asian parents. And on that point, actually, yeah. So I think growing up, um, academically, I've achieved my deliverables. I would say they're proud of my academic achievements
Yeah.
already. And then past that, I
Everything's a
have a benefit
bonus.
of everything else is a bonus, right? Everything else is like great. That's great. As long as you give some money back, contribute to
Yeah,
the
yeah.
household. Uh, then everything's fine. So I have that benefit. I think it's a subset of Asians specifically, not only a
Yeah.
minority race, but also coming from lower middle income. This gives me the benefit of not having typical Asian parents that you would
Yeah.
associate with.
Yeah, yeah. I think one thing is just that like if they're this is what I actually seeing in, the people I've interviewed. It seems like if they grew up in an environment where they're accepted, and they have that psychological safety to kind of expand that, right? Like whatever they're accepted. If their parents are like, you gotta be like X, Y, and Z, and if you don't tick those boxes, then you're a failure. And it's really hard for them to take any risk because it's like the loss of a perceived identity that is accepted by their parents, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And I think from a young age, I've also asked them, what do you expect of me? I would say, oh, just graduate. That's easy. That's fine. I'll graduate.
Yeah, that's but I think sometimes it's also, the lack of imagination, right? Like for example, like my
That's true.
parents, obviously they're in China, they don't speak a word of English. So to them, it's like at some point they don't even know what I do anymore, right? Like say if I were to tell them like I do management consulting, they're like, what the heck? I mean, like eventually they knew what that
Yeah.
was, but then that time in China, there were a lot of consulting. So they were just like, what is that? Right. And then so whatever you do, they're just like, okay, you're just going to do your own thing. Like they can't even care about it because they don't have the knowledge.
Yeah, same, likewise. I think until today, they don't even know what I do now,
Yeah.
truly. And it goes back even way back, like just picking what's my major. They don't have an opinion of what majors I would choose to. So I
Yeah.
think it started way earlier for me to give me that psychological sort of freedom to pick whatever.
Yeah. And it's almost like you're forced to kind of find yourself, right? Because it seems
That's
like you
right.
didn't really have a lot of, say, like mentorship from the family itself. It's a good thing too, because then, you gotta kind of think for yourself because nobody's there to tell you what to do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I think yeah, and on that point of mentorship, that's why I love to act. I kind of realized the value of having mentorship pretty. I don't know whether it's late or early, but in my third or fourth year in university, I started seeking out
Mm.
for mentors externally, and then sort of once I did that, I realized, oh, I should have done this way earlier. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and my company is built on that premise as well. In general,
Yeah,
to
yeah,
to
yeah.
drive mentoring for folks who don't
Yeah,
have it.
yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. No, so yeah, so we're definitely gonna get into it later. Another question I want to ask, just kind of on your previous point is that was your emotional turning point that made you kind of walk away from the safe path?
Consulting. Are you referring to from consulting?
Yeah, from consulting.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's pretty.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so I think after 2 years of essentially making slides and doing weekly presentations of slides, well, I think firstly there's benefit of consulting. I mean, you live with great people, it tests your fundamental skills. But at the end of the day, could I ask myself whether am I really building something, or I'm just providing advice to folks I don't even know, or folks I meet every 3 months, new folks I
Mm,
meet every 3 months once a project changes. So for me, I think there was a sense of burnout because I didn't find my joy. My joy is in building things. My joy is in creating things. And you sort of don't get to do that in consulting. And that's where, flip the switch. I did a 1 year stint in startup shadowing like a couple of co-founders before going out on my own. And that's where I think right now, even though I have a lot more problems on my plate now than I did in consulting, I find a lot more joy
yeah.
in what I do now.
Right. Right, right, right. So it seems like it was, really kind of a lack of sense of purpose when you were
Yeah,
in consulting. Yeah.
that's right.
It's funny because I think consulting is also a really interesting profession where it really depends on the projects you're on. Like sometimes if you do have like a good projects that lasted for like years, you can have amazing experience. And sometimes you have like the first project and it's like shit, and then you just get burned out, right? And then you're like, I don't want to do this
Exactly.
anymore.
But I think for me, well, it was whatever project, right? Give me an exciting project also. I mean, the nature of consulting is you consult, you don't build.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
even if you give me
You want
like
to have
100 exciting projects, like, I
yeah,
don't think,
you want to have skin in the game.
yeah, skin in the game, and also experience of building 0 to 1. This just
Yeah.
doesn't happen in consulting.
Yeah, yeah. I gotta say, I did a project and that was in OW where, I did build something like almost it's a telco from 0 to 1
Yeah,
in a country I'm not going to disclose, somewhere in Southeast Asia. But it was just a lot of bureaucracy, right? So like
right.
on paper, you're building something from 0 to 1, but in reality, you're
Exactly.
still like pushing paper, around, and you don't necessarily have ownership because you don't really have equity.
Exactly. And you also don't have agency to move people around. Whereas if you're the CEO of that supposed startup, it would be a
Yeah.
much more exciting experience.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So was there any cultural, I would say, it doesn't matter whether it's internal or external pressure or fear of disappointing expectations when you decided to pursue a startup full time?
Well, I think the only person to disappoint at that point of time was just myself.
Mm,
So I think I was pretty hard on myself on every. I mean, and even until today, any sort of retrospect that I do and things I could have done better, I'm always hard on myself. But the the benefit is there's no one else that influences this. I mean, of course,
mm,
I mean, I do, I'm accountable to my other partners, accountable to investors as well as our clients. But at the end of the day, I think the biggest risk factor of like who would I disappoint most is just me and myself.
mm.
And to circumvent that, it's a lot of retrospection required.
That's a very good way to look at it because I think a lot of people, when they make life-changing decisions, like they would tend to think about like everything else but themselves. Like even the way they think about themselves is very like, wrapped around the idea of like, I need to be perceived certain way. So
Mm,
like it's really hard to dissect, this is who I am and this is what I think I should be. And I've talked to many people like the biggest fear that they have when they're doing something this big is the fear of failure.
yeah.
Did you have that yourself as well when you're jumping?
Yeah, definitely. I think internally, yes, I'm very afraid of failing, but also if wise understanding that multiple failures, well, to get to success, you need to have multiple failures. But I
Yeah.
think again, it's more internally focused. I don't mind being perceived as a failure by someone else. I don't really care.
Mm,
But for me, if I perceive myself as a failure or perceive having failed of myself having failed, I think that's a worse fear.
100%. What do you have, say, like a set of value systems or like set of criteria that you guide yourself on so that you perceive yourself as success or on the right track or off the right track?
Yeah, I think one of the most popular theories that I subscribe to is basically regret minimizing behavior.
Mm,
Would I regret it if tomorrow if I wake up and I made that if I look back at the decision I made today, would I regret it? Or 5 years from now, if I look back at the decision I made today, would I regret it? So I think coming from that, it's a test of that you've accepted the risk reward ratio. You've accepted that the percentage risk of failure versus the expected reward. For me, that guides me. Yeah, and keeps me level headed.
I see. So this is something that I've actually heard from Jeff Bezos too. I think when he first started Amazon, he said that, or I think, at the time he was in a hedge fund and obviously he was making a lot of money.
Yeah, yeah,
But then I think that his decision process was also like, would I regret it if I don't do it? Like, how can I minimize the amount
exactly.
of regrets that I have in my life? So, how did you, like, I'm curious about, like, how did you actually think about it? Do you, like, 'cause say if you were to, look at a time span of like a year or 5 years, 10 years, unless you have a very solid goal, and then you're not going to change that goal, how could you measure whether, like certain behavior is regretful or not?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, well, you have to be fair to yourself also, right? I think when you look at back at like decisions I made 5 years ago, I have to take into consideration the context and the knowledge I had back then. I
Mm.
can't take into account the context and knowledge I have now. Like for example, I definitely if I do it on the basis of now, then I would definitely regret not having built like invested in Bitcoin,
Yeah,
right?
that's what
All of us,
everybody said.
but I didn't have that information. There's the point. 5 years ago, I don't have that information, so I have to be fair to my version of me 5 years ago, and the knowledge that I had in the context I was coming from.
I see, I see. So so basically at the time when you were deciding to do a startup, like what was your thought process in terms of what to choose? Because obviously you didn't choose crypto. So
Yeah.
what was your thought process at the time and what made you choose education?
Yeah. So I think a lot of first time founders would choose something they're passionate about. There's a certain knife that goes into the mindset, and I was not immune to that. So for me, I've been doing education all my life. Whether it's not full time, right? Really full time, I was a consultant. But even when I was a consultant, I volunteered for a lot of associations. I was part of
Mm,
the national mentoring movement in Singapore, all that
yeah.
stuff. So I picked a problem that was in my passion space. So I think that's, and second, I think I had good co-founders, like folks that
Mm,
I have known and I've worked with already for some of these
mm,
outside of work projects, and I trusted. So
right.
and third, I think it was the right time. I think before 30 years old, usually it's a nice time to take some risks because you have
Yeah.
little obligations. And after having been a consultant, I have some personal runway. So it was also the right time personally to start something and build some experience in building a business.
Yeah, I think so. I was really just joking about crypto because I think that like this is what I've
I
seen in this is what I've seen, for people who do their own business. Like you honestly can only do one of two, right? One is to make money, another one is like it's either for your head or it's for your heart, right? Like one is
Yeah,
something you love,
yeah,
another one is something that you make money from, and it's really
yes.
hard to kind of combine these two things in the same time. I think over time you can probably do it, right? But then like so initially you gotta choose your
Yeah,
battle, right? Whether you want to do it for something you love, whether you want to do it for like making a quick buck. And the ones that's sustainable is usually doing something you love because you will eventually gravitate towards it anyway. That's just my take.
as a first time founder, I would recommend do something you love because you'll fail so much as a
Yeah.
first time business owner that to just push through all these failures, you need that sense of purpose and passion.
Yeah, yeah.
But I don't think that applies for serial entrepreneurs. Serial entrepreneurs, you know what they love more than the industry space? They love success. So pick something that they will
Yeah.
succeed. Anything that succeeds, they will love. So you fall in love with the success instead of the industry, and I think that would apply to more serial entrepreneur.
That's very I think it's very true in a sense where I felt like if you're an entrepreneur, you want to focus on one industry, you want to go deeper, like because that you need to have almost like a generative energy, right? So like you pick something you love and it starts to generate more and more ideas, more and more partnerships and like life of its own. Versus like a serial entrepreneur is like you do something and it's like, like this like I don't know, like one energy source and you burst it and then you go to the next one. And, it's like, it's very short duration, but it requires a lot of impact, right? So it's like you can't, if you were to choose something you love long term, like, like I think a lot of actually what I'm trying to say is I think a lot of serial entrepreneurs has got like severe ADHD tendency. I think that's why they're like, like myself included, I do have ADHD and like
Yeah,
every single time when you see a new idea, you're so excited by it. So like
yeah,
itself, the excitement will generate more movement. But I do think it's very important to have that passion, to make it
yeah,
more sustainable, right? And that comes that wisdom part.
yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. Ultimately, I think everyone who's on the entrepreneurship journey will find their own style. I don't think
Yeah.
there's a one size fits all. I don't think there's no wrong answers. Of course, the best types of entrepreneurs is it's both, right? It's passion. There's a business to it. The market's growing as well as they're good at it in a
Yeah.
specific
Yeah.
product space. That will be like the best trifecta for
Yeah.
most
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. 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 For sure. Did you so here's a little bit of a, spicy question. Did your self-worth ever feel like tied to achievement? Like job title, revenue milestones, or being the first at something? And how has that changed as Kinobi evolved?
Yeah, I would say yes and no, right? I mean, part of my self-worth, right? Because I'm spending, multiple hours a week, a day, and so on this. This is huge part of my life. If it doesn't succeed, it is a testament to what am I doing really? And so
Yeah.
definitely there's a part of that. But secondly, to cope with stresses, there's definitely a dissociate. Not only from the achievements, but also like always having to think back on the day and think, did we enjoy this? Did we truly enjoy? Are we
Mm-hmm.
having good
Mm.
stress? In my company, we always emphasize good stress is different from bad stress. If you're
New
fully stressed,
stress.
if you're like super stressed, think whether it's good stress or bad stress. And we try to
Yeah.
take bad stresses away, like bad teammates, all these things. And we try to put good stress, which is new challenges. Is it interesting? Are we learning things on day-to-day basis? Are we being productive?
Right.
So for me, the journey is as important as the outcome. So yes, outcome definitely tied to self-worth, but I also look back at the journey as well, whether this is something I love doing, and insofar it is.
Mm. Yeah, I think what you're saying is like the new like we call it, like good stress, new stress, right? And how did you personally deal with good stress and bad stress? How did you deal with the bad stress to kind of minimize it, and how did you expand the good stress?
It's a good perennial question. Bad stress is reactive. Don't Typically you don't plan for bad stress.
Yeah.
It comes if like let's say a client cuts the contract, right? I hope that doesn't happen. Or it's a internal employee issue that comes to you.
Yeah.
Good stress is always pushing like your KPIs up, making sure that we're always rethinking the way we do things, and
Mm-hmm.
responding to trends in the space. So to answer your question, good stress is always about pushing ourselves hard. For us, yeah, as a company, we have not added a headcount for about 1.5 years, but our revenue has grown multiple times that. We're always challenging our current team. Can we do more with less? Because what we don't want, personally don't like, is managing large teams. So we're a team of like just 25 people
Mm.
dealing with like 60, 70 clients enterprise. I don't really wish to add to that at any point of time, or rather in the near future. So we wanna keep it that way. And that's how good stress come about. Bad stress, it's more reactionary. You just have to be prepared for this. And how I deal personally with bad stress is a healthy level of disassociation. I always treat it like a game sometimes.
Yeah.
Game, bad things happen, but it's not your entire life, really.
Yeah.
You can pause the game, or not quit the game. Pause the game and come back to it later. And your
Yeah.
decision ultimately, uh, you know, doesn't impact you or your life, truly.
Yeah.
It just
Yeah.
impacts the game.
Yeah, I mean it's a good way to look at it, also as a gamer too, right? Like I don't play games. The whole gamer mentality is something I felt like we can all really borrow just because I do think like life is a game. I have this the painting, you can't see it, but it's on my wall. It says life is a circus and enjoy the ride, enjoy the show.
Exactly.
And because we never really know what is real, like your perception, like sometimes I think that we all live in this world and we see different things because we perceive things differently. We pay attention to different things, right? So even if we do physically live in this world, the same world, we actually live in different worlds. So everybody is kind of playing their own game, right? Depends on what they
Yep.
perceive, depends on what they choose to believe, right? Their whole like nervous system, which is, kind of like filter of what they can perceive and believe in the end. And it is one thing that also I've noticed about people who I interviewed is that like they have people like they almost like have this way to hype themselves up. Like they have this ability to be like, how can I keep going? And it's very
Yeah.
intrinsically motivated. Like it's never about like the money, the numbers. Those things are important, but like fundamentally, it's the motivation is from inside. Are you somebody like that as well?
Yeah, it's a bunch of things. But yeah, I mean, if we dissociate it, and I think of like business as a game, then actually a lot of things start to make sense. Like to get to this revenue or to get to this level, you need to do like these couple of things. To do this
Yeah.
couple of things, you need to do this other couple of things. And then are we doing well across these things?
Mm.
So a healthy level of like zooming in or disassociation and then reassociation. For me, that helps. If I want to be a salesperson and hype myself up for an external purpose, I can switch that on as well. As long as there's an objective given to
Mm.
me in the game, I will do whatever it takes to get to the next level. Um,
Mm. So
so
I
so
think what
just
I
an
heard, yeah, so I think
yeah.
that what I heard is that you actually don't take things personally. You look at the outcome and be like, what are the things that need to be done? Instead of like, I think the founders tied their own identity and ego into the tasks and result. Did you watch that out for yourself or like how did you deal with that? It was very hard for me to kind of like dissociate and be like, not take anything personally just because it's just a part of a game.
Yeah. So it comes natural to me, and honestly, it has its downsides, right? Which is, the typical CEO would probably be someone who's cult leader type of material, and it's hard for me to be that because rationally, if I dissociate, it's honestly just a game. Then how
Mm,
do I embody? How do I do more of what? There's benefits to being your mode and my mode. My mode is
mm,
that I have healthy disassociation. I do things mostly logical in a logical way, and I remove emotions from the process. But there's a
yeah.
downside to it where people don't feel the emotions, and usually as a CEO, to be an effective one, to make people do irrational things, the
Motivate
human
them.
types, to
Yeah, yeah.
motivate them. So even like to join like a rockstar employee to join your company, even though they could join like Meta or Google, you need that kind of emotion and emotional skin in the game. And I think that's where I lack, and I recognize that.
Yeah. I
So
mean,
I
that's
would say
why
my
that's
mode is not the best also.
yeah. I mean, I gotta say that's why Zuckerberg hired Sheryl Sandberg, right? Because I don't think he was able to do that job just to motivate people. It takes completely different kind of person.
Exactly. But would Sheryl Sandberg be able to create something 0 to 1 more
Probably
better
not.
than probably not? Yeah. So
Yeah.
I have that issue.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I think that's where the strong founding team come in place, right? Like it's really kind of like complementing each other's strength and weaknesses. So what is something that you've unlearned from kind of moving from a structured environment such as, consulting to the uncertainty of entrepreneurship?
Yeah, biggest thing I think that planning does not equal progress.
Yeah,
In consulting, we do index more on the planning side rather than the get shit done side.
the doing things.
Um,
Yeah,
exactly, and irrationality does not mean wrong. You can do
yeah,
a lot of things in your entrepreneurship are naturally irrational.
yeah.
Do
For
I go to
example,
that? Yeah, I mean, for example, I'm going to Hong Kong for a conference next week, like spending a couple $1,000. I don't. This is a new conference that we're going to. We don't know what's the ROI, but fuck, like whatever, right? Well, I'm just gonna go and I'll realize the results, even though I don't have any
yeah,
connections. So we'll do it anyways because
yeah,
I have to do it. What else am I supposed to do for 1 week?
yeah, yeah.
So we make these irrational decisions a lot of time. You kind of have to, because if you keep making rational decisions, you don't move.
I think
That's a
also, sorry to interrupt you on that point. I think it's a very important point because like a lot of times rationality to us is just basically it's within our own limitation. Right? So like maybe whatever we think is rational, there's like 10,000 different things you
That's
can
true.
do, but we just don't perceive it. And like to your point, if you were to go to like just take a risk or like going on an adventure, you see different things, right? And then your horizon gets opened and then you then see 10 different opportunities. So that becomes your new rationale.
Basically, yes, yes. But even things like this, can I really hire that like really strong person and convince the person to come to us instead of Google? A consultant would give up entirely because based on evidence,
Yeah.
based on what the package we present, it doesn't make sense. Like why bother even trying? But the
Yeah.
irrational person would try anyways, and magic happens. And I think
Yeah.
that's where consulting doesn't teach you that at all.
Yeah. Future is not created by historians, right? You can only get data, like this much data to predict the future, but you need to create the future if you want to have a different result.
Exactly, and that's what you kind of have to unlearn in from consulting. Consulting, I mean, you take
Yeah.
like what, how many months to create a plan, and even when the plan is done, once done a thing. That's just a
Yeah.
problem in entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
plan for
Yeah.
that
You don't,
long.
well, you also don't have the kind of labor to create a plan, right? You need to just
Exactly,
do it, like, and oftentimes the people that you hire, they're not necessarily like the consultant type of people. You need them to have hunger to make things happen.
exactly, and you shouldn't hire consulting types. It's a startup.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Many young Asians still, especially I think in like in a place like Singapore, Hong Kong, we still equate success with stability, right? Doctor, lawyer, banker, etc. What do you think it takes to normalize non-linear, driven careers, such as the one that you are doing across Asia?
Yeah, it's a very difficult question because a lot of the things that are stopping young folks to start entrepreneurship is extremely systemic. What if I think what the key things are needed? I think one, a systemic structure to provide like safety nets. And by safety nets, I
Yeah,
mean personal runway, right? Uh, how can we convince a fresh graduate Singaporean to start their own business when cost of living is going to hit them pretty early on? How can we support that? I think it's a question to the Singapore
yeah,
powers that be to influence that. It's very scary. Like, imagine you can potentially get married in 2 years, you have to buy a house, you're tied to mortgage. Entrepreneurship does not guarantee that you can cover those expenses. So how do you build? How can the powers that be provide more runway and safety nets for would-be entrepreneurs? One is very important. Two, I think role models. I think role modeling is super important. I don't think there's enough of that and exposure to role models at a
Mm.
much earlier age. Can we start, have teachers showing showcases of like Singaporeans making it as an entrepreneur, as an alternative pathway? Could we start to push that? And
Yeah.
I think third, systemic stuff aside, the core reason why I was able to build a startup because I had a runway. I was in a career for 2, 3 years. But if someone was to start out as an entrepreneur immediately, I think exposure to other markets early on is super important. Like I don't think Singaporeans ever think of like when I graduate, I want to move to Indonesia because it's a lower cost of living. What that
Yeah.
enables me with a lower cost of living is that I can try many more things in a longer period of time. I can fail more. I can do more and learn more than being based in Singapore. I don't think that's a blocker in Singapore. Singaporeans don't want to move to
Yeah.
outside of
So
Singapore, inside ASEAN.
yeah, so okay, so I wanted to like I think it's such an interesting topic. I was talking to another Singaporean girl entrepreneur last week and she lives in New York and we're just kind of talking about this topic of entrepreneurship in Singapore and I think that there going to be a safety net, right? And the safety net I think you're talking about financially which is very valid,
Yeah,
but there's also different solutions around that which you mentioned about moving to a lower cost, perhaps like a massive market like Indonesia,
yeah,
but like sometimes people's egos in the way, right? Like they
yeah,
want they want to live in like, like the first tier city in the
yeah,
world or like, they want like when I was in New York, like New York is 2 to 3 times more expensive than Singapore. But
yeah,
like I see people there and I was just like, why are you guys living here? Like it's so like in terms of ROI, it doesn't make any sense.
yeah,
And
no,
they just wanted to say that they live in New York. Oh, I'm a New
yeah,
Yorker. Like, look at me, I've made it, right? And I think that that's actually, in my opinion, I think that's like an anti-entrepreneurial mindset. Just because like I should say, if you were objective oriented, that you want to achieve certain goal, and you look at your life and be like, am I optimizing for that objectivity? And if you're not, right? If you're not doing that, then you're not setting yourself up for success in this case. And
yeah,
so
agree.
yeah, I didn't know why you moved to Jakarta. Obviously, I'm pretty sure it's also a business reason, but like that makes total sense to me. And I think that that is really like amazing that you just recognized it and then you just did it so rationally. I think that's what set you apart from a lot of other people who just didn't take actions.
Yeah, part of it is just there's no other word for it. I think part of it is just ignorance. Like people think living life in Jakarta is tough. As Singaporeans would think that. All my Singaporean friends think that. But honestly, my weekends are fun. Like we play paddle 4 times
Yeah,
a week with my wife. We take. I mean, there's people in Bangkok, and then we take taxis everywhere. Like folks here live well if you're an entrepreneur.
yeah,
I've seen folks with like 2 kids and like 3 nannies. Like you can afford that kind of lifestyle on a modest
yeah,
income
yeah,
modest from a Singapore perspective income. And then you go
yeah,
to Singapore and you can't have
yeah.
those luxuries at all.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of times people look at what they have lost, right? Or what they need to lose in order to have certain things. Even if they are not 100% happy or that's not the perfect setup for what they're doing, they're like, but I'm going to lose like family time or I'm going to lose like that convenience, whatever they're having, right? So it's like there's a lot of loss aversion in the equation
Yeah.
unless it's like so extreme that's like push them the other way. So that's why I think it's very admirable that you're doing it because like the way you do it, it's not from like a place of pain, right? It's from a place of proactivity. Like you're doing it because that's, what you think makes sense and you just did it. Right. And a lot of people, unless you get like a burnout or like myself included, you need to have a burnout for you to be like, oh my gosh, like what am I doing? But why didn't
Yeah.
you realize it before that burnout? You're not
Yeah.
happy already.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. And a lot of people, unfortunately, are in a endless cycle of burnouts
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
for
yeah. It's like,
whatsoever reason.
yeah, it's like, let me just tap it out. Anyway, so you've also been deeply involved in mentoring youth in Singapore as we are talking about it. What patterns do you see in, I guess now Gen Z, young Asians struggle with identity pressure and also performance?
Yeah. Well, I think speaking on like general observations, I think a lot of students struggle with the fact that the way
Yeah,
Singaporean education is wired is that they're focused on incremental gains on one singular path. That has been the case when they were from K to 12, and that is the case, the mindset that they bring over to when it comes to careers. And that's terrible, right? Because first, is the path really the most suitable path for each person's strength? No, 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 probably not. And that causes a lot of stresses. And the way they approach things is always, yeah, getting burnout, and then okay, and then after the burnout, think again, okay, how can I be 10% better in this path next year? And then they get into burnout again. Now, what mentoring kind of solves, how it should be, and how mentoring plays a part in that, how it should be is that, yeah, there should be constant retrospection of like, am I even on the right path in the first place?
Yeah.
Right? And I think Singaporeans fail to do that because in K to 12, there's no such thing as, oh, I'm really bad academically. There's an option for me to switch to sports school immediately next year and
Yeah.
do that instead. No such thing, right? Or like do piano or like do completely coding classes and no English or history. No such thing as that. And
Yeah.
that's, but in reality, you can. As a career, you can. And I
Yeah.
think mentoring helps shape that because it gives more perspectives and that shapes thinking and inspires you to be able to do that. It's not a complete solution. But
Yeah.
yeah, how Singaporeans should start thinking is that, yeah, they should really think, are they even in the right path?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's, like in the Asian education system, because I came from China and I can talk about that as well. Like even in a
Yeah.
university, it's so tough to change a major, right? Because like how the Chinese education, like Gaokao, the college entrance exam works is that for every single major in every single university, you have a score, right? So if you get into a major of this university and your score, for example, is lower, and you wanted to go into the next major, which requires a higher score, it's unfair. So they don't allow it, right? I think that's the fundamental reason, but also it's almost like the systematic flaw where people don't think that you should always change. Like they don't think it's something that a kid should do. It's like they think that if you wanted to do this X, you should just stick with it, right? And like they forget when you are 18, 20 years old, you're still very like malleable. You still are thinking about, who am I, what I want to do, what I like, what I don't like, and not given that opportunity to explore, I think it's very harmful. Yeah, and I think that what you're trying to do is I try to almost I use mentorship as a way to complement the system, right? So there's like certain limitation of the system. And if we just give them an alternative perspective, maybe they can then use their intrinsic motivation to kind of navigate around the system and find a way that is best for them.
Yeah, definitely. Like the extreme analogy is this. Imagine instead of learning English, math, and science, you're learning badminton, football, and tennis. And then of course, like people will struggle.
Yeah, of
People
course.
will struggle learning badminton, tennis, and football. And then
Yeah.
just because you fail in the final exams, does it mean you're a failure? It absolutely doesn't. And I think it's an extreme analogy, but I think the point is still there.
Yeah.
People don't
Yeah.
know. Yeah, the people who are bad at football, sports in general, will for sure be stressed and burn out on a
Yeah.
yearly
Yeah.
basis.
Yeah, and it's sometimes if we grew up in a system, we don't question it because that's something that you just take for granted. But like sometimes the system might be designed for the majority of people, but then for a certain number of people, it's not necessarily designed for you. So you're like perhaps if you're bad in it, doesn't mean that you are bad. Like in general, it just means you gotta find what you're good at.
Exactly. Yeah, I think we're aligned.
Yeah. So have you ever struggled with the burnout yourself or feeling like lost while building Kinobi? If so, how did you navigate it?
Yeah, so I think burnout happens when you don't react well to bad stress, for sure. So maybe things happen, and usually it's more reactive, like many things happen all at the same time. And that's where things might spin out of control. So I think burnout does happen, right? And I talked about disassociation earlier, but if there's so much stuff going on, you don't even have time to disassociate. You sleep thinking about the problem, you wake up thinking about the problem, and that's when burnout happens.
Mm,
How I deal with it, I don't know. It's a good question.
we need to
But I
know.
think yes,
This is what I'm waiting for.
yeah. So typically I do, sports, gym or paddle or whatever to have a block in my calendar to have that periods of be disciplined with periods of disassociation basically. Because if I don't have that, yeah, that's when bad stress lingers, you can't disassociate and you burn out.
Yeah. So you're saying that you will have that timeout physically to to deal with burnout. So one thing I've noticed about burnout is that when a big burnout happens, there's like 10 small burnouts, right? Like micro, but that happens periodically. And if you need to wait until that big burnout happens, sometimes like a health crisis or like
Yeah.
a nervous breakdown, whatnot, it's because you've ignored a lot of signs before already. So
Yes.
how did you manage that relationship to make sure that you don't get a big burnout that takes longer time to recover from? Is it just like more of a frequent physical reset or like a mental switch where you pay more attention to your own triggers? Like what is that? What's a combination of coping mechanisms you have?
Yeah, that's a pretty good question. Because to be honest, I've never had like a big burnout before. So if I do, then I'll share what I would have done in retrospect to prevent that.
Yeah.
But in general, point still stands where you have to extinguish the small burnouts. Usually, how I cope, I sleep, honestly. just, just book a nap, 2 hours, block my calendar. Okay, I'm just gonna nap.
Yeah.
And Jakarta is very famous for a lot of the reflexologists. So like they're everywhere.
Yeah.
You can just book a massage basically.
Yeah.
2 hours
Guys,
there
massage is always a
solves
solution.
everything. Solves the micro burnouts for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of us, we are taught to like tough things out, right? What that taught us is that we then get to ignore all these smaller burnouts and then we don't allow ourselves opportunity to reset in the moment or asking ourselves tough questions, such as you said, are we even on the right track? Right. And then it's almost like this is a goal, we just need to hit it no matter what. And we don't question the validity of the goal and we don't question whether this is something we even want. So again, coming from a Chinese education system, that's exactly how that whole system was set up. It became sometimes like a big time waster because, like 10 years, 20 years, you realize you're doing the wrong thing because you never had that, like luxury in your mindset and be like, let me just take 1 minute to question whether I'm
Right.
doing the right thing.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, the massage thing I mentioned is that generally how I solve things, but yeah, definitely as many problems arise, I think one of the things that would cause more stress if you don't nip them in the bud, right?
Yeah.
It just lingers in your head. Like for example, let's say today there's a big customer that complains, sends in a massive email, right? The path one is you allow your team, can you analyze what's going wrong? Can you then come up with a plan to respond to this? And then it might take like couple of hours, even a day, and that
Yeah.
lingers in your brain. The second path is you just call the client immediately,
Mm.
calm them down, make sure tell them that everything's all right. We'll find out more information. From what it seems, this seems to be the problem, and it should be the problem. And then we'll get everything sorted in about 5 hours, and then instruct my team to do the proper analysis. Now, halfway through is definitely better because you've tackled it head on. That part of stress is removed. A significant amount of stress is removed from 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 the process. And at least I can do other things. If I do pathway one, I don't need pay another, but it lingers and maybe some other thing happens and it compiles. And that's
Yeah.
when it gets terrible.
So that's a very interesting insight that you mentioned. I wonder the reason I believe that people tend to do one instead of two, there's less success and there's failures, right? Is that people wanted to avoid discomfort. Like this instant gratification thing where they wanted to push down any sort of like discomfort, as long as possible. And how did you then kind of rewire yourself to be like, I'm going to do the right thing no matter how it hurts?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it has to do with I'm more afraid of me piling on too much on my plate at the same time, like in my mental plate. And then
Mm.
later on missing a lot of these things or losing track of these things. I have sort of experienced that before and it's not fun because the consequences are far much greater.
Yeah,
So
for
logically
sure.
speaking, now how I approach things is I try to reduce or minimize my mental bad stress as much as possible, whatever it takes.
Yeah, interesting. But then like the best stress is that sometimes, the bigger the stress it is, like the more uncomfortable it is to deal with it that moment, right? So how did you
That moment.
deal with that dilemma?
Yeah. So again, it's just having learned a lot of lessons of going down path one and the consequences of that,
Yeah,
which is far much greater. I'd rather just, you know, peel the
bend it off.
peel the band-aid off, so to speak, rather than slowly, shaving it off and then
Yeah.
bleeding later on.
Yeah. So okay.
Those kind
So
of
this is
things.
one thing I wanted to mention is that like obviously when we're working corporate lives, sometimes it's all about management, right? It's all
Yeah.
about kind of keeping the lid on, even though maybe it's like boiling inside. You just want to like keep the lid on so it doesn't explode. But you never want to, for example, turn off the fire so that you solve the problem at its root cause. And that I don't know whether you had that mental processing before, but I definitely felt like that was something that I need to unlearn going from a corporate environment to like doing your own thing.
Yeah, you're right, right. So those are the things I had to unlearn. Like, so for example, we're so much transparent to say that if someone's on PIP, everyone knows.
Mm,
Everyone knows. And the benefits are amazing. Once everyone knows someone is on PIP, we will all help to support that person. All of
right,
them, like everyone supports.
right,
Everyone proactively thinks on how to support, right? Rather than keeping it secret, right? Which is what corporates would do
right.
within a small group. Then there's like back talk, like gossip, and then like it's like, oh, don't work with this person. It's gonna be fired anyways within 3 months. We don't want
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
And we've
So you
seen in
think
many cases full transparency and like biting the bullet always
so you
better.
think transparency would reduce toxicity, like a toxic culture, and why?
Because we've seen the benefits. We've seen the benefits of going that route. There was an internal big case related to one employee separate from PIP that happened, and people were starting to gossip around, and a
Mm,
lot of it was factually inaccurate and stuff like that. So we decided 1 hour, everyone gets on a call, we'll explain everything. Feel free
mm,
to ask us any questions. And from that point onwards, no one talks about it, no one thinks about it. Everything's settled there and then. So we've seen the benefits of like just being fully transparent. We even go as
mm,
far to like share our
mm,
financials transparently every quarter to the whole
mm,
company, so that the whole company knows why are we not hiring, for example,
mm.
or why are we investing in the certain market.
Yeah.
They have full context instead of like, oh, this is just instructions from management.
So how do you deal with the fear? Because sometimes I think that the reason why we don't do, what we are transparent is because we're afraid of other people's reaction and repercussion of something that you can't control. So how did you deal with that? Like, let's just say that you then tell people everything. And then, for example, sometimes people don't want to tell other people their financials because they don't want other people to go look for a job and be like, oh, we're not doing well. Let me just jump the ship. How did you manage that fear that you inevitably would have when you are making yourself more vulnerable by being transparent?
Yeah. So the only answer I can give you is that we have done many of these exercises before where we thought transparency, where we were 50-50 on this, and we decided let's just go full transparency, and we've seen the benefits of
Yeah.
once those benefits, we see those benefits, history will dictate that doing more of those would
Mm.
be better,
Yeah.
essentially. So we bite the bullet. We know transparency is one of our culture, so to speak, in our company. We know that it's been working for us. Everyone expects this, and it has helped us going forward. It might not apply, if you copy paste this framework to a corporate, it might not work there. But it has worked for us, and
Probably doesn't.
probably not.
I think it's really fostering trust, especially when you are in like working a type ship and then everybody's all hands on deck, like where there's really need to trust each other and then eyeing the same goal and not being distracted. I think that is very important so that they don't think about a lot of things that could potentially distract them from the goal.
Yeah, and because what's the alternative, right? The alternative is people keep guessing. The people you struggle to explain. Okay, why does this department has a headcount that department doesn't? It's very hard to
Yeah.
explain without transparency, and that's even worse than
Yeah.
the alternative.
Yeah. So if a younger version of you, say 20-year-old Hafiz, could listen to this podcast, what would you most want him to know?
Good question. I mean, I will probably not speak to it, just because I don't want what I am now to influence what that 20-year-old version is. I think again, regret minimizing. Whatever I've done since 20 years old, I don't regret
Yeah.
at all. And so I don't want to change that. Yeah, I don't wish to
Yeah.
change that. Yeah.
But even if there's something that you want to affirm him, what would you say?
But I'm unconventional in the sense that I really don't want to speak to this person, because what happens is that let's say for
Okay.
example, I say go for crypto, buy Bitcoin, right? For example, let me of course I'm taking an extreme example of an instruction rather than like wisdom, but like then the person, the 20-year-old me would make the
Yeah.
decision based on my advice, would definitely be wealthy. But would that person have learned anything along the way? Retrospective wisdom
Yeah.
is always 100% accurate. But so I mean, the 20-year-old self wouldn't learn anything, and I want that. I don't want that. I want that 20-year-old to go through basically what I've been through
Mm.
the same way so that they learn the same lessons. And I think that's my point of I probably don't want to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, and that makes sense too. What I heard is that one of your philosophies is to minimize regret. And it seems like usually people who want to say something that they have some kind of regrets. And that's why they're like,
Yeah.
oh, I wish I've known this or that. But like if that's your, philosophy, obviously, like you've minimized that, right, by your own action already. So one last question is what is one cultural belief that you had to let go of to truly grow?
Interesting question, because the previous question was related to what that I have to unlearn, which is planning equals progress. Cultural beliefs.
Yes.
So my culture, being Singaporean, ethnically Malay, I would answer the opposite. What cultural belief that I thought I had to let go, but actually I'm super happy that it sticks with me, is content. Like I
Mm,
explained earlier, like folks from my background, typically career content. The definitions of success are typically family, more than career. And I
yeah.
think that applies to my business as well. I mean, I want great results, but I have to ensure that I am content with the journey and the fact that I enjoy doing what I do. I don't want to be super uncomfortable to the fact that I'm forced to do what I'm not enjoying. Of course, there's a nuance to that, but I
Yeah.
have to always enjoy what I'm doing, and I have to always be content with what I'm doing in certain ways. I think that sticks with me. I thought I had to let
Yeah.
it go, like I got to go ultra ambitious, ultra discomfort. But what happens is that then I'll be basically like playing with my left hand, it wouldn't be to my strengths. I need to play with my strengths and play to my strengths and using my strengths to pursue and push the company forward.
Yeah.
That's where I should be
Yeah.
ideally.
Yeah. No, I think it's very well said because, one thing about Chinese culture is that we are extremely competitive
Yeah,
and the competition comes with a lot of price, right? And one thing that you said was that content like almost doesn't exist, especially in modern China, where you're always going to chase the next big thing, right? Like, let's just say, even if you have one house, people are like, why don't you get three? Why don't you get five? And it's and nobody ever thought about, but what is this all for, right? Like I have five houses. Why do I need all of that houses? And I think that content is so hard to learn. If you have that
yeah,
mindset of like always go, 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 right? But then if you have that intent fundamentally and you almost have a little bit of break when you are going out of gas, right? You're like, I
yeah.
allow myself a break here and I can pick myself up and then go again. Which to people who like didn't grow up with it, it's very hard to learn.
Yeah. No, I mean, I would say the outcome, I have to be competitive about the outcome, but I have to be content in the journey.
Yeah,
I shouldn't be going through extremes because it's just not sustainable.
yeah,
I shouldn't play to my weaknesses, and I think that's sort of the point. But that's for the business. But you're right. Personally, I can be content.
yeah,
I don't have to have three houses. I don't have to have five houses. The joy is not in that as well. So for me, I'm okay with like, modest living and not having lifestyle inflation from my end
right.
personally.
Right. And I said that's the last question, but like I do have a follow-up one since you said that. When you're saying that you're gonna be competitive about the result and content about the process, how do you think about it? Did you think about, for example, this is a process I go through, how can I make it more, fun? Or do you get the fun from the existing process? Like how did you think about it so that the process is more enjoyable?
Yeah, competitive about the outcome means to say that we have higher targets, higher jobs to be done on a quarterly to quarterly basis. Content on the progress, and then to dictate that, you also have to improve the process.
Hmm.
Result is a factor of input, process, and then therefore leading to outcome.
Yeah.
For process, what I mean content in the process is that while we constantly have to review our processes, there's a lot more work that everyone needs to do to achieve the higher outcomes. But when I say content in the process, really, do I enjoy? Like, do I still find my joy
Mm.
as we add to the process? So I
Yeah.
think it's more of a mental process that is I have to be content with. Am I adding enough challenges on a quarter to quarter basis?
Gotcha.
Am I reducing bad stress for everyone, but increasing good stress by exponential times
Mm.
on a quarterly to quarterly process? I think that's what I meant. It's a bit meta, but I hope you get what I mean.
Yeah. Seems like in the process, you take your own human element in there. So like maybe the result can be like this is more business, but like the process, you gotta do it. And then in order to do that, you need to make sure that you show up energized so
Yeah,
that you design. It's like you kind of
exactly.
blend that human element in it so that you can maximize the result you achieve.
Exactly. And I think you have to be constantly stable-minded. It's not like, hey, everyone, let's go, and then you burn out and you lose that energy, and the next day you're disappeared.
Yeah.
That's not what we
Yeah.
want as well. Yeah, so I have to be
Yeah.
content so that there's sustainable energy as we.
Yeah. Like instead of being an overnight sensation. Amazing. So last thing I usually ask my guests is, can you fill out the sentence for me? The sentence goes, I'm proud of myself because.
Yeah, I think it's a good question. Yeah, I'm proud of myself because I end up, or rather at this point of time, I enjoy doing what I do. And I found what I enjoy doing, and I can go on. What the enjoyment means is building businesses, especially in a passion space that I'm super interested in.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much, Hafiz. Thank you so much for coming on to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Crystal. Really appreciate it.
If this conversation sparked something in you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you are building a more true life, not just more impressive, we would love to hear your story. Follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Asian Rebel Club and join our newsletter for more ways to connect. Link in the description. Until next time.